Every story leaves a shadow, and every shadow needs a place to grow. If you found yourself returning to these dark corners night after night, and you'd like to keep the lantern burning, we've just opened a Patreon. If you'd like to join us, you'll find a link waiting for you in the description below. As a Patreon supporter, you'll also receive every new episode 24 hours before it's released publicly, giving you an early glimpse into the darkness. Every contribution goes straight back into the show, improving audio quality, working with talented voice actors, supporting the team behind the scenes, and ensuring the incredible authors who share their nightmares are fairly rewarded. Of course, there's never any obligation. Simply listening means more than you know. But if you'd like to help these tales become even darker, even richer, and even more immersive, I'd be honoured to welcome you. Now, dim the lights, lock the door, and let's return to the darkness. There are two kinds of people who search for haunted places. The first kind wants proof. The second kind wants a story. Neither understands what they're looking for. I've spent 12 years chasing the things that hide in abandoned buildings, forgotten churches, forests where maps stop making sense, and houses people swear should have been burned down decades ago. I've stood inside hospitals where invisible hands dragged metal beds across empty wards. I've watched shadows move against the direction of light. I've heard voices whisper my name in places where no living person could possibly have been standing. People always ask me if I believe in ghosts. I don't. Ghosts imply something human. Most of the things I've encountered stopped being human a very long time ago. That's why I don't call myself a ghost hunter. I'm an investigator, an archivist, a collector. Every cursed object I recover is catalogued and secured inside my private collection. The Radner Occult Museum. People think a museum is a place where history is preserved. Mine is a place where history is imprisoned. Every artifact has a lock. Every lock has a blessing. Every blessing eventually weakens. One day, I'll probably die trying to keep them all contained. But that wasn't on my mind during the long drive towards Black Hollow County. At the time, I hadn't even opened the museum yet. This case would become the beginning of everything. Rain hammered against the windshield as I followed Highway 18 through miles of dense pine forest. The road twisted through the mountains like a black ribbon disappearing into the fog, and my headlights barely reached 20 feet ahead before the darkness swallowed them whole. My truck's dashboard clock blinked 6:42 p.m. The sun had already disappeared behind the mountains, leaving the sky bruised with deep shades of blue and grey. The weather report had called for light showers. Whoever made that forecast has clearly never been to Black Hollow. The rain fell so heavily that it sounded like thousands of fingers tapping against the roof of my truck. Normally, I'd listen to music while driving. Not tonight. When I'm heading towards a location, I prefer silence. Silence lets me think. Silence lets me remember why I'm there. Because no matter how many investigations I've survived, I still get nervous before every single one. Anyone who tells you that they aren't afraid of haunted places is either lying or hasn't seen enough. Fear keeps you alive. Confidence gets you killed. The GPS suddenly lost signal. The screen froze before flashing a message I'd seen more times than I can count. No satellite connection. I sighed. Of course. Most haunted locations exist in places technology seems to hate. Batteries drain, phone loses service, compasses spin. I've stopped trying to explain why. The road narrowed until it became little more than cracked asphalt, surrounded by towering trees. Branches scraped along the sides of my truck like fingernails. Then I saw the sign. Welcome to Black Hollow. Population 317. Someone had painted over the population number. Underneath, in faded white letters, Another message had been carved directly into the wood. Don't stay after dark. I looked at the dashboard clock. 6:58 p.m. Too late. Black Hollow wasn't the kind of town you'd accidentally stumble across. It looked forgotten. Every building seemed older than the last, their faded paint peeling beneath decades of rain. A rusted gas station stood abandoned on one corner, while a grocery store with boarded up windows leaned slightly to one side, as though even the buildings were tired. Most of the lights inside the houses were off. A few people I had passed didn't wave. They stared. One elderly woman stood on her porch clutching a wooden cross against her chest. She watched my truck drive past without blinking. I gave her a polite nod. She hurried back inside and slammed the door. Friendly place, I muttered. At the centre of the town sat a small diner, with a flickering neon sign that read Mabel's. The parking lot held only 3 vehicles. I parked beside an aging sheriff's cruiser. This was where I was supposed to meet Sheriff Walter Briggs. He'd been the one who contacted me. His letter had been unusually short. If you're really who you say you are, come to Black Hollow. Don't enter room 366 alone. There had been no signature beyond his name, no explanation, just an address. Normally I ignored letters like that. This one felt different. Experience teaches you to trust instincts that don't make sense. Mine had brought me here. The warm smell of coffee and fried bacon greeted me as I stepped inside the diner. Conversation stopped immediately. Every head turned. For a moment, the only sound in the room came from the rain striking the windows. A waitress in her 60s offered me a nervous smile. Are you Blake Radner? She said. I am. She pointed towards the back booth. He's waiting. Sheriff Walter Briggs looked exactly how I imagined. Late 60s, broad shoulders, despite his age. Grey beard, weathered face. The kind of man who'd seen enough tragedy to stop being surprised by it. You made good time, he said, withdrawing. The roads weren't exactly busy, I replied. They never are. I slid into the booth opposite him. He didn't waste time with introductions. Instead, he reached beneath the table and placed an old newspaper on the surface between us. The headline caught my attention immediately. Local man found dead inside abandoned hotel. Below, it was a grainy black and white photograph of a decaying building, the Deadridge Hotel. What happened? I asked. Walter folded his hands together. You tell me. I've never been here before, I said with a confused look. No, he said quietly. But you've seen places like it. I nodded. Too many. He took a slow sip of coffee before continuing. The hotel shut down in 1986. Fire? I asked. He shook his head. People. What about them? I took a sip of the coffee. The waitress sat on the table in front of me. They started disappearing. How many? I placed the cup back down on the table. We officially recorded 17 deaths, he stated as he shifted in his seat. Officially? He looked towards the rain-streaked window. The real number is closer to 40. I felt a chill despite the warmth inside the diner. All inside the hotel? I asked. Room 366. Every investigator had heard stories like this. Most are exaggerated. Some are complete nonsense. A handful are true. The way Walter said those 3 numbers made me think this belonged in the last category. What exactly lives there? I asked. Walter gave me a tired smile. If I knew that, I wouldn't have written to you. He told me everything the town knew. The Deadridge Hotel had opened in 1951. For over 30 years, it was the busiest hotel in the county. Travellers, salesmen, families, business owners, everyone stayed there. Then, in the early 80s, strange things began happening. Guests reported hearing someone knocking on their doors late at night. Free knocks. Always free. When they answered, nobody was there. Housekeepers complained that room 366 was always occupied, despite never being rented. Fresh towels disappeared, beds became unmade overnight, lights turned themselves on. Management assumed teenagers were sneaking inside, until the first body was found. A businessman from Portland, dead in room 366. No injuries, no signs of struggle. The coroner ruled heart failure. Then another guest died. And then another. And another. Within 2 years, the hotel closed its doors forever. People still entered from time to time. Urban explorers, homeless drifters, curious teenagers. Some came back shaken. Others never came back at all. Walter reached into his coat pocket and removed an old brass key. Its metal had darkened with age. Attached to it was a tarnished tag stamped with the number 212. This was my room. I frowned. You stayed there? 38 years ago, he said with a soft wisp to his voice. And? I checked out early. The bell on the door rang out throughout the diner. You saw something, didn't you? He looked directly into my eyes. I heard someone crying inside room 366. You went to investigate? I raised my eyebrow. I was sheriff. His expression darkened. I thought someone needed help. He looked back towards the window. What happened? Walter didn't answer immediately. Instead, he rubbed the scar running across his left hand. Finally, he spoke. The crying stopped the moment I touched the doorknob. And then, I asked in excitement. Someone whispered through the door. What did they say? His voice dropped almost to a whisper. They said, you came back. A silence settled over the booth. I had interviewed hundreds of witnesses over the years. Most embellished details without realizing it. Walter wasn't embellishing. If anything, he was leaving things out. I've never gone near that room again, he admitted. I don't blame you. He slid another item across the table, an old floor plan of the hotel. Someone had circled room 366 in thick red ink. Take this, he said whilst grabbing his items and sliding out of the booth. I appreciate it. Oh, and one more thing. His face became unusually serious. If you hear knocking, I looked up. Don't answer it. By the time I stepped back outside, night had fully settled over Black Hollow. The rain had eased into a cold drizzle. Across town, beyond rows of dark buildings and swaying pine trees, I finally saw it. The Deadridge Hotel. Even from nearly a mile away, it dominated the skyline. 5 stories tall, its windows were nothing more than empty black holes staring across the valley. One of them reflected a brief flash of lightning. For just a second, I could have sworn I saw someone standing in the 3rd floor window, watching me. I blinked. The figure was gone. Walter walked up beside me. You still planning on going? He asked. I didn't drive 6 hours to change my mind now. He nodded slowly. I figured you'd say that. He reached into his jacket and handed me a small brass crucifix. It belonged to Father Donovan. His name was carved into the metal. The priest? He was the last man who tried blessing that hotel, Walter said. What happened to him? Walter looked towards the distant silhouette of the building. He never finished. I slipped the crucifix into my pocket. I'll bring it back. His eyes met mine. No. He shook his head. Keep it. I didn't understand what he meant until much later. I climbed into my truck, started the engine, and began driving towards the hotel. In the rearview mirror, the lights of Black Hollow slowly disappeared behind the rain. Ahead of me, the Deadridge Hotel waited in absolute darkness. I had no idea that by sunrise, I'd leave that place carrying the first cursed object that would one day become the foundation of the Blake Radner Occult Museum. Nor did I know something inside the hotel was already waiting for me. It had been waiting a very, very long time. The Deadridge Hotel looked different the closer I got. From the edge of Black Hollow, it had seemed like nothing more than another abandoned building. An old relic left to rot after decades of neglect. But as my truck climbed the winding road towards the hilltop where it stood, the place began to change. It wasn't physically changing. It just felt bigger. Every time my headlights swept across the building, it seemed further away than it should have been. I drove for nearly 10 minutes after I could clearly see the hotel, yet somehow, it never appeared to get much closer. The road curved through the pine forest in impossible ways, doubling back on itself until I could no longer see the lights of Black Hollow behind me. The only thing ahead was the hotel and the rain. The windshield wipers struggled against the downpour as thunder rolled across the mountains. I glanced at the dashboard clock, 7:48 p.m. Strange. It felt much later. The drive from town should have taken 5 minutes at most. I checked my rearview mirror. The road behind me was gone. Not hidden by darkness. Gone. There was only a wall of thick fog pressing against the truck. I frowned. That's new. I've learned not to panic when reality starts behaving strangely. Panic clouds judgment. Judgment keeps you alive. I kept driving. Eventually, the cracked pavement opened into a circular driveway overgrown with weeds. My headlights illuminated the hotel's entrance. The Deadridge Hotel stood 5 stories high, its brick walls stained black by decades of rain and mildew. Ivy covered across the exterior like veins on an ancient corpse, disappearing into shattered windows that resembled empty eye sockets. One massive wooden sign still hung over the front entrance. Deadridge Hotel. Several letters had fallen away over the years. Lightning flashed overhead for a split second. I thought I saw movement behind one of the third floor windows. A silhouette, tall, watching. Another flash. Nothing. I killed the engine. Silence settled over the hill. Even the rain seemed quieter here. Too quiet. I grabbed my backpack from the passenger seat and went through my equipment one last time. Flashlight, fresh batteries, digital audio recorder, EMF reader, thermal camera, infrared camcorder, holy water, an iron hunting knife, a first aid kit, and a black leather satchel for artifact recovery. Everything exactly where it belonged. I slipped Father Donovan's brass crucifix around my neck. I hope you know what you were doing, I muttered. The wind answered with a low whistle through the broken windows. I stepped out of the truck. The cold hit immediately. Not winter cold, not mountain cold. This felt artificial. The kind of cold that settles into your bones instead of your skin. I closed the truck door behind me. The slam echoed across the empty hillside. Then, knock, knock, knock. I froze. The sound hadn't come from the hotel. It came from behind me. I spun around. Nothing. Just my truck. The sound had been identical to someone knocking on glass. 3 slow knocks. Exactly as Walter had described. I walked around the truck. Nothing. Every window was intact. No branches, no birds, no explanation. I forced myself to breathe. Not yet, I whispered. I'm not even in sight. The front doors stood 30 feet away. They were enormous, solid oak reinforced with rusted iron hinges. Years of weather had split the wood in several places. Yet, the doors remained perfectly upright. I climbed the stone steps leading to the entrance. The closer I came, the heavier the air became. It's difficult to explain. Some haunted places feel cold, others feel oppressive. The Deadridge Hotel felt aware, like I had stepped into the field of vision of something enormous. I reached for the brass handle. Before my fingers touched it, the doors slowly creaked inward on their own. I stared into the darkness beyond. No turning back now. I crossed the threshold. The smell hit me first. Rotting wood, wet carpet, dust, and beneath everything else, a faint metallic scent. Fresh blood. The lobby stretched out before me beneath a collapsed chandelier hanging precariously from the ceiling. Torn wallpaper peeled away from the cracked walls, exposing damp wooden beams beneath. Furniture lay overturned as though people had fled in a hurry decades earlier. Yet something felt wrong. There wasn't nearly enough dust. Abandoned buildings collect years of decay. This one looked like it was abandoned yesterday. I switched on my flashlight. Its beam swept across the reception desk. A brass bell still sat on the counter. Out of habit, I almost rang it. Something stopped me. A feeling. Instinct. Instead, I leaned over the desk. The guest register lay open. Impossible. Paper should have rotted away years ago. I carefully turned the brittle pages. Names. Hundreds of names. Dates stretching back decades. Some signed in. None signed out. I frowned. Every guest had checked in. No one had ever checked out. A drop of water landed on the page. I looked upwards. The ceiling wasn't leaking. Another drop. This one landed on the back of my hand. It wasn't water. It was warm. Dark, red blood. I jerked backwards, flashlight sweeping across the ceiling. Nothing. The dripping stopped immediately. I looked back at my hand. Dry. No blood. No stain. Just skin. Hallucinations already. That wasn't a good sign. I took out my recorder. The tiny red light blinked on. Case file 001. Investigator Blake Radner. Time 7:59 p.m. My voice echoed strangely through the empty lobby. I'm now inside the Deadridge Hotel. The building shows extensive structural damage consistent of long-term abandonment. Initial observations include unexplained auditory phenomena before entry and possible visual hallucinations. The silence returned. Then, another voice finished my sentence. Welcome home. I spun around so fast, I nearly dropped the recorder. No one. The lobby remained empty. My heartbeat hammered inside of my chest. The recorder was still running. Slowly. Very slowly I pressed playback. Static. Then my own voice. Possible visual hallucinations. Silence. No second voice. Nothing. I stared at the recorder. I know what I heard. The building answered. A loud creak echoed somewhere above me, followed by footsteps, heavy, measured, walking across the 3rd floor. 1, 2, 3, 4, back and forth as though someone were pacing. I switched on the EMF reader. Nothing. no readings whatsoever. That bothered me more than if it had went crazy. Most haunted locations produce electromagnetic interference. The complete absence of anything suggested whatever was here wasn't affecting the environment. It was affecting me. I walked deeper into the lobby. Portraits still hung crookedly along the walls. Old photographs of smiling guests, wedding parties, hotel staff, families enjoying vacations. As I passed one particularly large portrait, something caught my eye. I stopped. There were 6 people in the photograph. 5 smiled. The 6th was staring directly at me. Not at the camera. At me. His face was unnaturally pale, his eyes completely black. He wore a bell-top uniform. I leaned closer. The glass reflected my flashlight. When I looked back, the 6th person was gone. Only 5 remained. I stepped away. Nope. For the first time that night, I genuinely considered leaving. Then I remembered Walter's words. 40 people. Maybe more. If there really was something anchored here, it needed to be contained. I couldn't walk away. Not anymore. A narrow hallway led deeper into the hotel. Old signs pointed towards the ballroom, the restaurant, the kitchens, and the grand staircase. I chose the staircase. Whatever waited in room 366 wasn't going to find me hiding in the lobby. The first step groaned beneath my boots. The second cracked loudly. Halfway up, I stopped. Someone was humming. A woman. Soft. Gentle. A lullaby. It floated down from somewhere above. 3rd floor. The melody sounded familiar. Not because I'd heard it before, but because it felt like something I should have remembered. As I climbed higher, the humming grew louder. Then it stopped. Mid-note. Complete silence. I reached the 2nd floor landing. The hallway stretched away into darkness. Every guest room door stood wide open. Every single one. Well, except one. Room 212. The brass number gleamed beneath a layer of dust. Walter's room. The door was closed. I walked towards it. The closer I got, the colder the air became. The doorknob slowly turned by itself. The door opened around 3 inches. A voice whispered from inside. "Sheriff?" My blood ran cold. Walter had told me he hadn't been in here in 38 years, so why? Why did the room still remember him? I stared into the darkness beyond the cracked doorway. Something moved. Not quickly, not threateningly. Just enough to let me know something was waiting inside. I tightened my grip on the flashlight. Whatever was in room 212, it wasn't the reason I'd come, but somehow I knew it wasn't going to let me reach 366 without meeting it first. I took one slow step towards the doorway. The floor creaked beneath my boots. Then, from somewhere higher in the hotel, 3 heavy knocks echoed through the building. Knock. 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 Every door on the 2nd floor slammed shut at exactly the same moment, except room 212. Its door slowly opened the rest of the way. The darkness inside seemed deeper than the darkness outside. And from within, a pair of pale, opened eyes, watching me, waiting, smiling. I don't know what scares me anymore. The things I can see, or the things that choose not to be seen. For a long moment, I stood frozen outside room 212. My flashlight fixed on the darkness beyond the doorway. Those pale eyes hadn't blinked once. They simply watched me from somewhere inside the room, hovering just beyond the reach of my light. Every instinct I had screamed at me to back away. I've learned over the years that haunted places don't always attack with claws or teeth. Sometimes they tempt you. They lure you into making the first mistake. Walking into room 212 would have been exactly that. I took one slow step backwards. The eyes remained still. Another step. Nothing. Then I reached into my backpack and pulled out a small brass bell. Not a church bell. A spirit bell. An old trick taught to me years ago by a retired priest who spent most of his life investigating alleged possessions. If something answers the bell, he told me, it knows you're there. If nothing answers, then it's already beside you. I hated remembering that part. I gently rang the bell once. The clear metallic note echoed down the hallway. Silence. 5 seconds had passed. Then, a second bell rang from inside room 212. I never moved. Neither did the eyes. Another 5 seconds. The second bell rang again. Closer. My breathing slowed. That wasn't possible. There had been no movement, no footsteps, nothing, yet somehow whatever was inside the room had moved closer. I wasn't dealing with a ghost. Ghosts mimic. Ghosts repeat. This understood. Without taking my eyes off the doorway, I reached into my pocket and scattered a little thin line of blessed salt across the hallway. The reaction was immediate. The eyes vanished. The room felt completely dark. The temperature rose several degrees. Then, the door slowly drifted shut on its own. Click. The latch locked. I finally breathed again. Not tonight. I wasn't here for room 212. Room 366 was waiting, and something told me it wouldn't appreciate being kept waiting. The stairwell to the third floor stood at the far end of the corridor. Every step felt heavier than the last, not physically, mentally. It was as though the building itself wanted me to stop climbing. The air grew denser. Breathing became difficult. Halfway up, I noticed something strange. The walls were changing. The faded wallpaper from the lower floors had disappeared. In its place hung dark burgundy wallpaper that looked new. I reached out and touched it, dry, perfect, as if someone had replaced it yesterday. The wooden banister gleamed beneath layers of polished varnish. The cracked marble steps beneath my boots looked freshly cleaned. I frowned. No, this wasn't possible. I looked back towards the second floor. Everything behind me remained abandoned, rotting, broken. Ahead, the hotel appeared alive. One more step. The scent of decay disappeared. Instead, I smelled expensive perfume, fresh coffee, cigar smoke. I heard music. Soft piano music drifted through the hallway above. Laughter followed. My flashlight flickered. When it stabilized, I was no longer looking at an abandoned hotel. The third floor was full. Men in tailored suits walked the corridor carrying briefcases. Women in elegant dresses chatted quietly near the elevators. A bellhop pushed a luggage cart past me without acknowledging my presence. Every light fixture glowed warmly overhead. The wallpaper was immaculate, the carpet looked brand new. For one impossible moment, the Deadridge Hotel had returned to life. I stood completely still. Nobody looked at me. Nobody reacted. It was like watching a memory unfold around me. A little boy ran down the hallway chasing a red rubber ball. He couldn't have been older than 7. The ball bounced towards me. Instinctively, I bent down and caught it. The moment my fingers touched the rubber, everything stopped. The laughter ceased. The piano felt silent. Every person in the hallway froze exactly where they stood. Slowly, Every head turned towards me. Not one after another, all at the same time. Hundreds of eyes looking onto mine. Their smiles disappeared. The little boy spoke first. "You aren't supposed to touch anything." The lights exploded, darkness swallowed the hallway, the ball crumbled into black ash in my hands. A deafening scream echoed through the corridor. Then, everything returned to normal. The hallway was abandoned again. The wallpaper peeled from the walls, the carpet rotted away beneath my feet. The ceiling leaked rainwater. I staggered backwards, trying to steady my breathing. What the hell? A low chuckle answered from somewhere behind me. I spun around. Nothing. But the sound hadn't been imaginary. Someone was enjoying this. I checked my watch. 8:17 p.m. Impossible. I'd been inside the hotel for nearly half an hour. It felt like several hours had passed. I pulled out my phone, still no signal. The battery had dropped from 94% to 31. Without warning, the phone vibrated. One new voicemail. No service, no signal, yet somehow a voicemail. I hesitated before pressing play. Static filled the speaker, then my own voice. "If you're hearing this, don't go into... He isn't alone." The recording cut off. I stared at the phone. I never recorded that message. Before I could think any further, the screen turned black, completely dead. The battery hadn't drained, it was just off. I slipped it back into my pocket. Technology had become useless once again. Room numbers lined both sides of the hallway. 341, 347, 343, 343. Something was wrong. The numbers made no sense. They skipped randomly. Some repeated. Others appeared twice. One door displayed 3 different room numbers nailed on top of one another. 358, 359, and 358 again. The hotel's layout wasn't changing. It had never made sense to begin with. Then I found it. Room 366. At least, it should have been. The brass numbers on the door kept shifting whenever I looked directly at them. 366, 367, 368. I blinked hard. The numbers settled. The hallway suddenly became silent. Not ordinary silence. Absolute silence. My breathing disappeared. The dripping water stopped. Even my footsteps made no sound. I could hear my own heartbeat. Slow. Heavy. Then, it stopped. 1 beat. Nothing. 2 beats. Nothing. 3. Nothing. I grabbed my chest. I wasn't having a heart attack. I could still breathe, still move, but my heart had stopped. Panic threatened to take over. Suddenly, one massive heartbeat slammed through my chest so violently it nearly knocked me off my feet. The hallway filled with sound again. Water dripped from the ceiling, wind whistled through the broken windows. My pulse raced. I stepped closer to room 366. The brass doorknob looked polished, untouched by time. 3 deep claw marks stretched across the wood. Not random scratches. Someone or something had tried desperately to escape. I reached for the doorknob. Before I touched it, a voice spoke directly beside my ear. "You're early." Warm breath brushed the side of my neck. I spun around so violently my flashlight flew from my hand. It clattered across the floor. Its beam spun wildly through the darkness. For one brief second, the light illuminated a man standing at the opposite end of the hallway. He wore an old crimson bellhop uniform, perfectly pressed. His white gloves were spotless. His face was impossible. It looked blurred, like someone had tried to erase it. Only his smile remained perfectly clear. Wide. Far too wide. He raised one gloved hand, not waving. inviting. Then the flashlight rolled again. The light moved away. When I snatched it up from the floor and pointed it back, the hallway was empty. Except there were fresh footprints in the dust leading towards me. Not away, towards me. They stopped exactly where I was standing. I slowly looked down. Another pair of footsteps continued onwards. Mine. Except I hadn't taken those steps yet. They led directly to room 366. Straight through the door. Every hair on my arm stood on end. The hotel wasn't showing me ghosts anymore. It was showing me things that hadn't happened, or things that were going to. I don't know which possibility frightened me more. I looked at the door one final time. Whatever waited behind it already knew I was coming, and somehow it already knew how this night would end. I wrapped my fingers around the cold brass doorknob. This time, the door didn't open by itself. It felt as though something on the other side was holding it shut, waiting, listening, smiling. Then, 3 slow knocks came from inside. Knock. 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 A voice, calm and almost welcoming, drifted through the wood. "Mr. Radner, it knew my name. Your room is ready." There are moments in every investigation where you have a choice. Walk away or step into the dark. Most people think courage is the absence of fear. They are wrong. Courage is hearing every instinct in your body scream at you to run, and still taking one more step forward anyway. As I stood outside room 366 with my hand wrapped around the cold brass doorknob, every lesson I'd learned over the past 12 years echoed through my mind. Never answer when something calls your name from the dark. Never follow a voice you cannot see. Never accept an invitation from something that isn't human. The voice behind the door had done all 3. It knew my name, it had invited me inside, and somehow I knew it wasn't human. I closed my eyes for a moment and whispered a prayer I hadn't spoken since I was a teenager. I'm only borrowing this life. The words felt strange leaving my mouth. I wasn't particularly religious. Experience had taught me that faith wasn't about certainty. It was about refusing to surrender when logic had already abandoned you. I tightened my grip on the crucifix hanging around my neck. Then I turned the handle. This time, the door opened. The room beyond looked impossible. After everything I'd seen inside the hotel, I expected another decaying room. Instead, room 366 looked occupied. The wallpaper was spotless, the curtains hung neatly beside a rain-covered window. A bedside lamp cast a warm amber glow across polished wooden furniture. Fresh towels rested beside the bathroom door. The bed had been perfectly made. Even the air smelled clean. Vanilla. Old books, fresh linen. I stood in the doorway without moving. My flashlight swept across every corner. Nothing. No shadows, no movement, no sign that anything had ever happened here. It looked like a hotel room waiting for its next guest. I checked the digital thermometer clipped on my backpack. 71 degrees. Comfortable. Outside, the 3rd floor hallway had been barely 40 degrees. I frowned. Nothing about this made sense. The floor beneath my boots creaked as I stepped inside. Immediately, the door behind me closed. Softly. Not a slam, just click. I turned. The handle wouldn't move. I wasn't surprised. I'd expected that. What I hadn't expected was the sound of running water. The bathroom faucet had turned itself on. I approached slowly. Every instinct told me not to pull back the shower curtain. Naturally, I pulled it back anyway. The bathroom was empty. The sink faucet continued running. Crystal clear water poured into the basin. I reached forward to shut it off. The moment my fingers touched the handle, the water turned black. Not dirty, black, thick like ink. It swirled down the drain, carrying strands of long dark hair with it. I stumbled backwards. The faucet shut off by itself. When I looked again, the sink was perfectly clean. No black liquid, no hair, just white porcelain. "You've got a sense of humour," I muttered to the room. Something laughed, very quietly, right behind me. I spun around. Nobody. Only my reflection staring back from the large mirror mounted beside the bedroom dresser. I stared at myself for several seconds. Everything looked normal. Wet hair from the rain. Black field jacket, flashlight in one hand, iron knife hanging from my belt. Just me. Then, my reflection smiled. I didn't. My stomach dropped. The reflection tilted its head slightly, studying me with an expression I'd never made before. It looked curious, almost amused. I stepped backwards. The reflection stayed exactly where it was, still smiling, still watching. Then, it slowly raised one hand. Not to wave, not to knock. 3 gentle taps against the inside of the mirror. Knock. 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 Cracks exploded across the glass. I blinked. The mirror returned to normal. My own frightened face stared back at me. No smile. No cracks. Nothing. I wasn't sure whether to feel relieved. I pulled my recorder from my backpack. Case file 001, 8:34 p.m. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. I have entered room 366. Interior condition is impossible. I paused. Everything inside appears untouched, despite the building's overall decay. I stopped recording. Immediately, the recorder clicked back on by itself. A man's voice began speaking, calm, professional, like a hotel receptionist. "Welcome to the Deadridge Hotel, Mr. Radner." I froze. "We hope your stay will be pleasant. Checkout is unavailable." The recorder shut itself off. I stared at it for a long time before slowly placing it back into my pocket. That wasn't a ghost. Ghosts repeat, ghosts imitate. This thing held conversations. Something caught my eye. On the nightstand beside the bed sat an old leather guest book. It hadn't been there when I first entered. I was certain of it. I picked it up carefully. The cover was worn smooth with age. No title, no markings, only faded black leather. Inside, every page listed a guest, name, date, room number, thousands of entries, some dated as far back as 1951. Others were impossible. One page read, Blake Radner, check-in tonight, room 366, checkout pending. I stared at my own name. Someone had already written it in elegant black ink. My hands felt cold. I hadn't signed anything. Slowly, new letters began appearing beneath my name, as though an invisible pen were writing across the page. Room service requested. The writing stopped. A knock echoed through the room. 3 slow knocks. Knock. 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 Not the door. The closet. I looked towards it. Its wooden door stood shut. The brass handle slowly turned. Once. Twice. Then stopped. Another knock. This time from inside. Something was in there. I reached for the iron knife at my belt. Not because I thought it would save me, because holding it made me feel less helpless. I approached one careful step at a time. The closer I came, the colder the room became. My breath fogged in front of me. The handle turned again. Slowly, the closet door opened by itself. Just enough for darkness to spill into the room. I pulled it open the rest of the way. Empty. Only old wooden hangers swayed gently from the rail. I exhaled. Too soon. One hanger continued moving, not swinging, turning, very slowly, until the hook faced me. Something unseen was holding it. Then another hanger turned, then another, until every hanger faced exactly the same direction, towards me. At the same time, something whispered from inside the closet. So many coats. A pause. None of them fit anymore. The voice sounded old, broken, like someone whose throat had been crushed decades earlier. I slammed the closet shut. Immediately, the whispering stopped. The room fell silent again. Then I heard it. Music. A piano. Soft. Melancholy. The same melody I heard while climbing the 3rd floor. It wasn't coming from somewhere inside the hotel anymore. It was coming from inside room 366. I followed the sound to the window. Rain streamed down the glass. Beyond it stretched the dark forest surrounding the hotel. Then, lightning flashed. For one brilliant instant, the parking lot below was illuminated. My truck was gone. The road was gone. The entire hillside had vanished. Instead, the hotel stood in the middle of a city. Cars lined the streets, people walked beneath umbrellas, the neon hotel sign glowed brightly. Everything looked alive. Another flash of lightning. The vision disappeared. The abandoned hillside returned. My truck sat exactly where I'd left it. Or most of it. The driver's side door hung open. I knew I had closed it. Someone stood beside the truck. They were far too away to identify. Tall, wearing black, watching my window. Another flash, gone. I stepped away from the glass. Something wasn't trying to trap me anymore. It was trying to convince me I'd never left. Or, perhaps, that I never arrived. Then I noticed something that hadn't been there before. A silver room key rested neatly on the bed. Attached to it was a tarnished brass tag. 366. I hadn't seen it when I entered. I was certain. My pulse quickened. This was it. Every haunted location has an anchor, an object that binds whatever evil exists there to our world. Sometimes it's hidden, sometimes it's buried, sometimes it wants to be found. I approached the bed carefully. The closer I came, the louder the piano became. The room temperature dropped rapidly. Frost spread across the edges of the window. My flashlight flickered. The bedside lamp dimmed. Every instinct told me not to touch the key. I reached for it anyway. The instant my fingers brushed the cold metal, the entire room went black. Not because the lights went out, because something enormous had blocked them. A voice spoke from directly behind me. Not loud, not angry, merely disappointed. I was hoping, the voice paused, you'd stay longer. A cold hand settled gently on my shoulder. Its fingers felt impossibly long. Too many joints, too many knuckles. I couldn't bring myself to turn around because deep down, I already knew. Whatever had just touched me wasn't standing on the floor. It was standing on the ceiling, right above my head, waiting for me to look up. Every nerve in my body screamed at me not to look. There are things you can survive simply by refusing to acknowledge them. Predators hunt with teeth. Some entities hunt with attention. The cold hand resting on my shoulder tightened ever so slightly. Its fingers were impossibly long, pressing through my jacket until I could feel each one against my skin. Then it spoke again. "You've been looking for me for a very, very long time." The voice sounded calm, almost kind. "I've never been looking for you," I whispered. "No?" It chuckled softly. "You've been collecting pieces of us." A wave of icy air washed over me. The room smelled of old perfume and damp wood. My grip tightened around the brass key. Without thinking, I yanked Father Donovan's crucifix from around my neck and held it behind me. The reaction was immediate. A shriek exploded through the room, not from pain, from rage. The hand vanished. The darkness peeled away like smoke, and the bedside lamp flickered back to life. I spun around. Nothing stood behind me. The ceiling was empty. The room looked exactly as it had moments before, except the walls. The floral pattern was gone. In its place were hundreds of deep scratches, names, thousands of names carved into the plaster. Some were barely readable, others looked fresh. I recognized one immediately. Walter Briggs. Then another. Father Donovan. My flashlight swept further across the wall. Near the center, my stomach dropped. Blake Radner. The letters looked as though they'd been carved years ago. Not tonight, years ago. No. I stepped closer. Beneath my name, another sentence slowly appeared, each letter cutting itself into the wall with an invisible blade. Room occupied. The hotel groaned. The floor trembled beneath my feet. From somewhere beyond the door came the sound of dozens of footsteps, not running, walking, slowly, deliberately towards room 366. The knocking began. Not 3 knocks, hundreds. Every door in the hotel slammed over and over again. Bang, 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 bang. The wall shook violently. Pictures crashed to the floor. The lamp burst. The room plunged into darkness once more. Only my flashlight remained. Its beam cut across the bedroom. The bed had disappeared. The furniture was gone. The room had become impossibly large. The walls stretched into darkness. The ceiling rose far above my head. Room 366 was no longer a hotel room. It was a hallway filled with doors. Hundreds of doors. Each of them carried a brass number. Every number was different. Thousands of hotel rooms. Thousands of prisoners. Every door began shaking. Hands pounded from the other side. Voices cried out. Some begged for help. Others screamed. Children. Old men. Women. Their voices overlapped until they became unbearable. "Please let me out. Don't open the door. It's pretending. Run." Then every voice stopped. Absolute silence. One door opened. Room 366. A man stepped through. He wore the crimson bellhop uniform I'd glimpsed in the hallway. Now I could finally see his face. I wish I couldn't. His skin was stretched so tightly across his skull that it had split around the corners of his mouth, creating a permanent smile that reached almost to his ears. His eyes were completely black, reflecting no light at all. Yet he carried himself like a gentleman. He straightened his gloves, smoothed his jacket, then bowed politely. "Good evening, Mr. Radner." His smile widened. "I've been expecting you." I raised the crucifix. "You have killed a lot of people," I said with a scared tone. "I haven't killed anyone." He tilted his head. "They simply never checked out." The hallway around us rippled like water. "You see," he spread his arms, "this hotel remembers everyone who stays." He looked towards the endless rows of doors, and eventually, they remember it. I backed away slowly. You aren't a ghost. No, he said confidently. A demon? He laughed. Such a simple question. No. What are you? I asked. He looked almost disappointed. I am the host. The word echoed through every hallway. I was the first guest. Images exploded into my mind. A hotel opening in 1951, elegant parties, champagne, music. Then, a man in a bellhop's uniform murdering the owner. Another guest, another and another, blood soaking into the hotel's foundation. Not one killer. Many. Every violent death feeding something sleeping beneath the building, until the hotel itself became alive. The host smiled as though he'd seen my thoughts. It learned our hunger. He tapped the wall, and I became its face. The endless hallway began collapsing. Doors tore from their hinges, invisible hands reached from the darkness. The host never moved, he simply watched. You've came for the anchor. I held up the brass key. His smile faltered. There it is. The key had grown impossibly cold. Frost spread across my fingers. The intagged engraved with 366 glowed faintly. The host took a single step towards me. For 70 years, every guest has carried that key. Another step. It doesn't unlock the room. Another. It locks it. Realization hit me. The key wasn't trapping people inside, it was trapping him. The host lunged. He moved faster than anything I'd ever seen. 1 second he stood 20 feet away, the next he was inches from my face. I threw myself sideways. His claws tore through the wall where my head had been. The hallway erupted into chaos, doors burst open. Dark figures poured into the corridor, not attacking me, attacking him. Dozens of pale hands grabbed at the host uniform, the trapped souls, or whatever remained of them. For the first time, the host looked afraid. They belonged to me. The figures ignored him. They dragged him backwards. He fought violently, tearing free from one grasp only to be seized by another. I remembered the blessed salt, my backpack, still laying where I dropped it. I ripped it open, grabbed the pouch and emptied the entire contents into a circle around the brass key. The salt ignited with a brilliant white light. The key violently vibrated. The host screamed. Not a human scream. A sound so deep the building itself shook. Cracks raced across every wall. Windows exploded outward. The endless hallway shattered like glass. Suddenly, I was back inside room 366. The bed had returned. The furniture stood where it belonged. The mirror above the dresser fractured into 1,000 pieces. Inside every broken shard, the host stared back at me, smiling. No prison lasts forever. Then every reflection vanished. The brass key fell silent. The room became still. The door unlocked. I didn't wait. I grabbed the key and ran. The hallway outside was collapsing. Chunks of plaster rained from the ceiling. Wooden beams snapped like matchsticks. The staircase shook beneath my boots as I raced downward. Behind me, something walked. Not ran, walked. Steady. Patient. 3 footsteps. Pause. 3 footsteps. Pause. As though it already knew I couldn't escape. I reached the lobby. The front door stood wide open. Rain poured outside. I sprinted across the cracked tile floor and stopped. The guest register still sat open on the reception's desk. My name remained written across the page. Below it, one final blank space. Checkout. Without understanding why, I reached for the pen laying beside the book. The moment I signed my name, the ink flared bright white. A deafening roar echoed through the hotel. Every light exploded, the building lurched violently, the sound of footsteps behind me stopped. Forever. I ran. The instant I crossed the front doors, the entire third floor collapsed inward with a thunderous crash. Dust billowed into the stormy night. Windows shattered. The Deadridge Hotel stood silent once more. I didn't stop running until I reached my truck. Only then did I look back. The third floor window where room 366 had been was completely dark. For a brief moment, I thought I saw someone standing there. Not the host. Not one of the trapped guests. Me, watching myself leave. Then, lightning flashed. The window was empty. Three weeks later, I purchased an abandoned warehouse outside my hometown. Most people thought I intended to convert it into storage. In a way, they were right. Display cases were built from reinforced iron and thick laminated glass. Protective symbols were carved into every foundation stone. Salt was poured beneath the concrete floor before it was sealed. Each room was designed to contain something that should never again be allowed into this world. The very first exhibit sat alone beneath a single light. Artifact DR 366. Recovered. Deadridge Hotel, room 366. Description: brass hotel key, marked 366. I locked the display case, turned the key, and listened. Nothing. For 3 days, nothing happened. On the fourth night, while cataloguing evidence in my office, I heard it. 3 slow knocks. Knock. 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 They came from the museum floor. I walked to the display case one. The brass key rested exactly where I'd left it, but the glass, the inside of the glass, someone had written 4 words in the condensation. Thank you for returning me. Before I could react, the writing slowly disappeared. I reviewed the security footage the next morning, at exactly 3:33 a.m. Every camera in the museum had recorded the same impossible event. The key had vanished from its stand, only for 11 seconds. Then it reappeared in the exact same position. No doors had opened, no alarms had sounded, nothing else had moved. That was the day I realized something that changed the course of my life forever. I hadn't imprisoned the evil from the Deadridge Hotel. I'd only moved it. And with every cursed object I recovered after that, the museum grew a little more haunted. I still wake up some nights convinced I'm back in room 366. Sometimes I hear 3 knocks on my bedroom door. I never answer, because I still don't know if I ever truly checked out. Knock, knock, knock.